The first time my future daughter-in-law's mother looked directly at me, she did not ask my name. She looked at the navy dress I had bought on sale, then at the small suitcase by my chair in the Sydney hotel lobby, and said, "Oh good. The help has arrived." For a second, I thought she was speaking to somebody behind me. My son, Daniel, was standing near the lift with his phone and a list of wedding arrangements. He heard her. I saw it in the way his shoulders tightened. But then his bride-to-be, Claire, touched his arm and whispered something I could not hear, and Daniel gave me that strange smile people use when they want trouble to disappear without facing it. That was when I understood I had come from Newcastle to Sydney not as the mother of the groom, but as an inconvenience meant to stay quiet until the photographs were over. I wish I could say I walked out with my head high, but I had spent 31 years raising Daniel to be a good man, and I was terrified that one sharp sentence from me would become proof that I was the difficult one. So I picked up my suitcase, smiled, and followed them upstairs. Claire's family had money in the effortless way some people have good posture. They did not need to speak about it. It was in the private rehearsal room, the driver downstairs, and the florist delivering white orchids wrapped in paper that looked like fabric. Claire's father, Graham, owned medical practices. Her mother, Vanessa, introduced herself at last without warmth. "Daniel says you worked in a bakery," she said. "I managed one for 17 years. She nodded. "That explains why he is so practical." It sounded like a compliment until you heard the way she said practical, as though it were a condition he might eventually outgrow. I had been a single mother since Daniel was 7. His father left after deciding the life he wanted did not include school uniforms, broken washing machines, or a little boy who cried for him at night. I worked early shifts at the bakery, cleaned offices twice a week, and learned to stretch one chicken into 3 dinners. There were years when I could not buy myself new shoes, but Daniel had what he needed. I never gave him speeches about sacrifice. I wanted him to remember laughter in the kitchen, candles stuck into supermarket cupcakes, and me staying awake beside him before exams even when I had to open the shop at 5. I did not expect repayment. I only wanted to stand beside him on his wedding day and know I had not been erased from his life. At dinner, the seating card placed me between Claire's second cousin, who spoke about his boat, and an elderly aunt who kept asking whether I was part of the catering staff. Each time I corrected her, she laughed. "Well, darling, you do look capable." Vanessa sat at the center of the table, describing the wedding as if Claire had planned every inch without anyone else. She mentioned the garden venue overlooking the harbor, the string quartet, the imported champagne. Then she looked at Daniel. And of course, Claire wanted something intimate. There were 140 guests. Daniel caught my eye once. Guilt sat plainly on his face. He mouthed, "I'm sorry." I nodded because mothers learn early how to answer their children without making them feel worse. But something was settling into place inside me. Not anger. Anger is hot. This was colder. It was the understanding that some people do not insult you by accident. They test how much disrespect you will accept, then build a confidence on your silence. After dinner, Daniel walked me to my room. "I should have said something," he said. "Yes," I told him. He stared at the carpet. "Claire's stressed. Her mom gets intense when she's stressed." "Your wedding is tomorrow, Daniel. I do not want to make it about me." "You won't." But he sounded uncertain. I touched his cheek the way I had when he was little and had a fever. "I'm proud of you. That doesn't change because other people don't know who I am." He hugged me quickly, as if he was afraid someone might see. When he left, I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, still wearing my coat. The next morning, I arrived early because Vanessa had asked me to make sure the welcome table was neat. She had said, "Since you are used to organizing things, perhaps you could keep an eye on the little details." I knew what she meant. She wanted me useful and out of the way. The venue was beautiful. A pale sandstone terrace looked over the water, and the harbor was silver under the cloudy morning sky. White roses lined the aisle. For one quiet minute, before anyone else arrived, I imagined Daniel walking toward the woman he loved. I imagined his face when he saw her. I imagined how happy his father would have been if he had stayed long enough to deserve an invitation. Then Vanessa arrived with 2 women from Claire's side. She glanced at the welcome table. Could you move those menus? They look messy. I moved them. Not there. By the gift box. One of the women laughed. You really do have an eye for this. You should have been in events. Vanessa smiled. She has always been very hands-on. She had known me less than a day. Yet she was already telling people who I was. Not Daniel's mother. Not a woman who had carried a family alone. Just someone with useful hands. By midday, guests began arriving. I stood at the entrance with Daniel's aunt Margaret, who had come from Perth and knew my whole history. She squeezed my fingers as Vanessa passed. Don't let them shrink you, she murmured. I smiled, but I had not yet decided whether I had the courage to take up space. Then Claire appeared at the top of the stone stairs in her wedding dress. She was beautiful. Her hair was pinned with tiny pearls, and her hands shook around her bouquet. For a moment, she was not Vanessa's polished daughter or Graham's pride. She was simply a young woman about to change her life. I walked over. Claire, you look lovely. Her eyes filled. Thank you. Then Vanessa stepped between us. Could we have a little room? She said, smiling as though I had wandered into a private dressing room. Claire needs to focus. I stepped back. As I did, I heard Claire whisper, Mom, please. But Vanessa had already turned away. The ceremony began 20 minutes later. I sat in the second row, not the first. Vanessa said there had been a seating mix-up. Daniel's father had not come, so an empty chair remained beside the aisle where I should have been. I stared at it through the entire ceremony. When Daniel looked toward me before his vows, he noticed. I saw his eyes move from my face to that empty chair. His jaw tightened, but he said nothing. The vows were beautiful, and that almost made it worse. Daniel spoke about choosing Claire every day, even when life became hard. Claire cried as she promised to stand beside him when the world felt unkind. The guests applauded. The quartet began to play. Everyone rose. I stood too, clapping until my palms hurt. Then Vanessa leaned toward the woman beside her and said, not quietly enough, at least she knows how to behave when she's given a proper seat. The woman laughed. Margaret heard it. Her hand found mine again. This time, I did not smile. I looked across the aisle at Vanessa. She was greeting someone important, her face bright beneath the flowers. She did not see what had changed in mine. Maybe she thought she had won because I had stayed silent. Maybe Daniel thought silence had kept the peace. But while the guests moved toward the reception terrace, a man in a charcoal suit approached me near the gift table. He was about 60, with rain darkening the shoulders of his jacket. He looked at the name card in my hand, then at my face. Are you Alina Ward? He asked. Yes. He glanced toward the reception doors, where Vanessa was laughing. My name is Martin Hale, he said. I knew your husband before he disappeared, and there is something you need to know before this day is over. Martin did not look like a man who enjoyed delivering bad news. His eyes stayed on mine, but his hands kept tightening around the brown envelope he carried. I'm sorry to approach you here, he said. I would not have done it if it could wait. What is this about? I asked. David Ward. Hearing my former husband's name in a stranger's voice felt like opening a drawer I had nailed shut years ago. Martin took a breath. I worked with him at Renshaw Logistics before he left Newcastle. I was in accounts. I found the documents after he disappeared. For a moment, I saw Daniel at 7 in his pajamas, asking whether his father had missed the train. I remembered the empty wardrobe and David's blue mug beside the sink. I don't understand, I said. Your husband took out a line of credit in your name. He forged your signature, used the money, and ran when the company started asking questions. The air seemed to narrow around me. I knew about the debt, I said. I paid it. I know. That is why I tried to find you. David had contacted Martin 2 years earlier from a caravan park near Dubbo and asked whether the record still existed. Martin said they did. David cried, apparently. That word angered me more than silence. He said you never knew the truth, Martin continued. He said you probably believed he left because he did not love you or Daniel. He left because he did not love us enough to stay. Martin nodded. That may still be true, but he also left because he was a coward who had made a mess he could not face. Some sentences do not heal you, but they name the wound you have blamed on yourself. For years, I replayed every argument and unpaid bill, wondering whether I had pushed him away by needing too much help, money, honesty. Now I knew that while I was measuring flour before dawn and packing Daniel's lunch, my husband had been writing my name where it did not belong. David died in April, Martin said. He left this with a solicitor. The solicitor found my old address because I testified during the company inquiry. I asked to deliver it when I learned who you were. I stared at the envelope. My name was written across the front in David's uneven handwriting. Oh, no apology, no explanation. Just my name, as if he still had the right to put it there. You should keep it, Martin said. You do not have to read it today. I took the envelope because my hands needed something to do. Why today? I asked. Why at my son's wedding? His face tightened. My niece runs the function team. She mentioned the groom's name while I was checking venue accounts. When I saw your name on the family list, I came down. I thought you deserved to know that whatever they say about you, you survived more than they can see. It was a strange kindness, badly timed but sincere. Before I could answer, Vanessa called from the other side of the terrace. Elena, we need you for photographs. The way she said need made it sound like a summons. Martin stepped aside. I'm sorry, he said again. I slipped the envelope into my handbag and walked toward the photographer. The bridal party stood before the water. Claire's smile was fixed and pale. Vanessa held her elbow between poses. When I approached, the photographer checked his list. Mother of the groom, he said. Wonderful. We'll do the immediate family one now. Vanessa gave a little laugh. Perhaps first just our family. Then we can do the extended version. The photographer hesitated and looked at Daniel. I waited for my son to say, no, Mum stands with us. Instead, Daniel glanced at Claire. Her eyes were already wet. Guests were turning their heads. He said, we'll do both. It was not cruel. That was what made it hurt. It was small, careful, and convenient. I stood aside while Claire's parents took their place beside the newlyweds. Vanessa rested her hand on Daniel's shoulder as though she had raised him herself. The camera clicked again and again. When it was my turn, the photographer asked Daniel and Claire to move apart so I could stand between them. Vanessa said, could Elena be at the end? She is shorter. I was not shorter than Claire. The photographer looked uncertain, but uncertainty often obeys the loudest person in the room. I moved to the end. As the camera flashed, Daniel reached his hand behind Claire and found mine for half a second. His fingers were cold. That was all he gave me. During the cocktail hour, I escaped to a quiet corner near the service corridor. I told myself I was checking the envelope, but I only held it. The paper had softened at the edges. David's handwriting slanted as though he had written it on a moving train. Claire found me there. I'm sorry about the photos, she said. I looked at her. Are you? She flinched. It was not a proud reaction. It was an honest one. My mother gets controlling, she said. She says things before I can stop her. And I should stop her. Claire pressed her lips together. Daniel has been anxious for weeks. He keeps saying he wants everyone to get along. I know that is not an excuse. No, I said. It is not. She looked toward the reception room. He loves you, Elena. I know he does, but he does not know how to stand up to conflict. That landed hard because it was true. Daniel had spent childhood trying to keep peace between adults who did not deserve his concern. He had watched his father leave. He had watched me work through exhaustion without complaint. Maybe he learned that love meant swallowing discomfort until it disappeared. I wanted to tell Claire that she was about to marry a good man who had not yet learned courage when it cost him something. But I was too tired to teach anyone that lesson on their wedding day. I hope he learns, I said. Claire nodded, and I saw fear in her face. Not fear of me. Fear that she already knew what her marriage would become if she kept letting Vanessa speak for both of them. At the reception, my place card was at table 12. The head table held Daniel, Claire, their parents, and Vanessa's sister. One chair remained empty at the far end. I could have asked why I was seated among Claire's university friends. I could have made that empty chair visible to everyone. Instead, I sat at table 12 and listened to strangers tell stories about holidays in Europe. Margaret sat beside me. She had switched places with someone without asking permission. You don't have to keep doing this, she said. Doing what? Pretending not to see it. I looked toward Daniel. He was smiling for a photograph, but his eyes kept searching the room. I do see it, I said. That is the problem. Dinner arrived. The speeches began. Graham spoke first, warm and polished. He praised Claire for her grace and Daniel for becoming part of a family that knows how to look after its own. The guests applauded. Then Vanessa stood. She smiled at Daniel, completely comfortable before a room full of people, deciding which truth they would remember. She thanked the venue, the planner, the florist, the musicians. Then she turned toward Claire. Our daughter has always had a generous heart, she said. She sees potential in everyone. The room laughed softly, expecting a joke. Vanessa glanced toward Daniel, then toward me, and from the beginning, she insisted that Daniel's mother feel included, even though this world may be very different from the one she is used to. The laughter came again, louder this time. I felt Margaret's hand tighten around mine. Vanessa lifted the microphone closer to her mouth. Because family is not about where you come from, she said. It's about knowing your place once you arrive. Then she looked straight at me and smiled. And I think Alina has done a wonderful job learning hers. For a few seconds, nobody moved. The room had that thin, uncomfortable quiet that follows a joke which has gone too far. Vanessa still held the microphone, smiling as though I would rescue her by laughing. I did not. I looked down at my hands. One rested beside my dinner plate. The other was inside my handbag, curled around David's envelope. Then Daniel stood. He pushed back his chair slowly and walked to my table. His face was pale. "Mum," he said, barely above a whisper, "come outside with me." I glanced at Vanessa. She was still standing by the head table, holding the room hostage with her pleasant expression. "No," I said. His eyes met mine. "Please." I rose because he was my son, and he led me through the side doors onto the terrace. Fine rain had begun to settle on the railing and darken his suit. "I'm sorry," he said. He did not try to smile or explain it away. That was new. I should have said something at the rehearsal dinner. At the photographs. When they put you at another table. He looked at the wet stone beneath our shoes. I kept telling myself I was keeping the peace. That was not peace, I said. That was asking me to carry everyone else's discomfort. His face tightened. "I know. No, you are beginning to know." For a moment, we only listened to the rain. Then I took the envelope from my bag. "Your father died in April," I said. Daniel looked up sharply. "The man who brought this knew him years ago. David forged my signature for a loan. He ran when it all caught up with him. The debt I paid after he left was never mine." Daniel stared at the envelope as though it might open by itself. "I knew you worked too much," he said. "I knew things were hard, but I thought he just left because he was selfish." "He was selfish, but he did this to you." "Yes, and you never told me. You were a child." "I'm not a child now." "No," I said, "you are not. And that is why I need you to understand something. Love does not mean keeping people so comfortable that they never have to face what their silence costs someone else." Daniel's eyes filled. "That is what I did today," he said. "I protected Claire from her mother, and I let Mum pay for it." I don't want to be that man." "Then do not be." When Daniel was 9, he came home from school after another boy had taken his lunch money. He had not fought back. He had not even told the teacher. He said the boy seemed angry, and Daniel thought perhaps he needed it more. I had held him at the kitchen table and told him kindness was never the same thing as making yourself small. He had looked at me with those solemn brown eyes and promised he understood. Standing on that terrace, I realized he had heard the words but never learned how to live them when the angry person was dressed well, smiling politely, and sitting at his wedding table. "You are not a bad son," I said, "but being a good son is not a feeling. It is something people can see in what you do when it would be easier to say nothing." He nodded. "Then I need to do something." The terrace door opened. Claire stepped out, lifting the front of her dress clear of the rain. She had removed her veil, and her makeup had begun to smudge beneath her eyes. "I asked them to keep people busy inside," she said. "You both needed a minute." Daniel started to speak, but she raised one hand. "Let me say this first." She faced me. "My mother has made remarks like that my whole life. She says cruel things with a smile, then calls people sensitive when they react. I have always excused it because confronting her felt worse." She swallowed. "Today, I watched her move you from the photos. I watched her put you at another table. I knew it was wrong. I said nothing because I wanted the day to stay easy." Her voice trembled, but she did not look away. "I am sorry, Elena. I do not expect you to make me feel better about it. I am sorry because I helped it happen." I studied her. The apology was not polished. It was frightened and honest. "Thank you for saying it plainly," I told her. Claire nodded, tears slipping down her face. I don't want to begin my marriage by letting Daniel abandon you. Daniel took her hand. She held it, but her attention remained on me. Whatever happens next, she said, I will not defend her. Claire looked toward the doors. She will be furious. She can be furious, Daniel said. The sentence was quiet, but it changed the air between them. Claire drew in a breath, as though she had been waiting years to hear someone say it without apologizing. From inside, Vanessa called her name. The sound was sharp, stripped of every bit of warmth. Claire shut her eyes briefly. Then she said, we have to go back. We returned together. The music stopped as soon as Daniel spoke to the DJ. Vanessa was near the head table, whispering furiously to Graham. She saw us enter and looked first at Claire, then at me, then at the envelope in my hand. What is going on? He asked. It was not concern. It was annoyance that something had happened beyond her control. Daniel did not answer. He took the microphone. I know this isn't part of the schedule, he said. A few uneasy laughs moved through the room. Vanessa did not laugh. But I need to say something before the night continues. Daniel looked at Claire. She gave him a small nod. Then he looked at me. My mother raised me alone, he said. She worked when she was exhausted. She taught me how to keep my word and how to treat people with respect, even when I had nothing else to offer. The room went silent. Today, I allowed her to be treated as though she had to earn a place in my life. I did that because I was afraid of conflict. I was wrong. Vanessa took one step forward. Daniel, this is unnecessary. He turned toward her. For the first time that weekend, he did not soften his face to protect someone else's comfort. No, Vanessa, it is necessary. His voice remained calm. My mother is not staff. She is not a guest who needs to learn her place. She is my family, and she will be treated with the respect she has always deserved. Graham lowered his eyes. Vanessa's face went white, then red. I was making a toast. You were humiliating her. I did no such thing. Claire moved beside Daniel and took the microphone from him. Her fingers shook. Mom, you did, she said, and I let you. Vanessa stared at her. This is my wedding too, Claire continued. Daniel's mother is part of our family. I am done pretending your comments are harmless because they are said with a smile. The waiter nearest the head table had gone completely still. Claire looked at the empty chair beside her. Please bring Elena's place setting here, she said. It should have been here from the beginning. Vanessa gave a short laugh. You cannot be serious. I am serious. Graham stood beside his wife. He did not touch her. He only said, in a rough voice, enough, Vanessa. She looked at him as though he had betrayed her. Perhaps in her mind he had. I did not feel triumphant. I felt tired, like a room after the windows have been opened following years of stale air. Daniel came to me and held out his hand. I placed mine in his. As he led me to the head table, David's letter pressed against my palm. I had survived his absence without an explanation, but before the night was over, I would have to decide whether opening that envelope would free me or give a dead man one last chance to speak into the life I had built without him. I did not open David's letter at the reception. That surprised me. For years, I thought that if he ever came back into my life, even through a note, even through a stranger's apology, I would need every answer he had refused to give. I thought closure was something another person could hand you, neatly folded, after making you wait long enough. But standing beside my son at that head table, I understood that the most important thing happening in my life was not written in the envelope. It was happening in the room. The staff brought a fresh place setting and moved it beside Daniel. Claire stood to make room for me. Her hand brushed my shoulder as I sat down. I'm glad you're here, she said. It was a small sentence. It should have been ordinary. Instead, it reached somewhere deep in me because I had spent the entire day being told, without anyone saying it outright, that I was supposed to be grateful for whatever space I was given. I looked at her and said, thank you. Nobody rushed after Vanessa. Nobody asked Daniel to apologize for setting a boundary. I saw several guests exchange uneasy looks, then look at me with the softness they had avoided all day. Perhaps they were remembering dinners where they too had swallowed insults to preserve appearances. Perhaps they simply understood that a polite room can hide a great deal of cruelty. Either way, the silence no longer belonged to Vanessa. Finally, Graham said, "Vanessa, sit down." "I think I need some air," she replied. "That may be wise," he said. She looked at him in disbelief, then walked out through the terrace doors. A few guests watched her leave. Most looked down at their drinks. The music started again, softly at first. Conversation returned in fragments. It did not return to normal, exactly. It returned to something more honest. Claire and Daniel danced after dinner. Rain tapped steadily against the glass doors, and beyond them the harder lights blurred on the dark water. I watched my son hold his wife with a tenderness that made me ache. I hoped they would learn early what it had taken me years to understand. A marriage cannot be built around keeping one person's anger from rising. That is not harmony. That is fear wearing good manners. At one point Claire looked over Daniel's shoulder toward me. She did not smile for the room. She smiled only for me, nervous and sincere. I lifted my glass to her. Near midnight, I found a quiet seat by the window and opened David's letter. The paper inside was thin and folded 3 times. His words began with an apology for leaving. He wrote that he had been ashamed, scared, and weak. He said he had watched my name appear on court notices and knew I was paying for something he had done. He said he wanted to come back many times, but every year he stayed away made the next year harder. I read every line. Then I read the last paragraph twice. He wrote that I had been stronger than he ever understood, and that Daniel had become a man despite him, not because of him. For a minute, I felt the old rage rise in me. How convenient, I thought, to recognize my strength after you have made me use all of it. Then something unexpected happened. The rage did not disappear. It simply stopped owning the whole room inside me. David's letter was not redemption. A dead man's regret could not return the years he stole or give Daniel the father he deserved. But it gave me a truth I had needed without knowing it. I had not been abandoned because I was too difficult to love. I had been abandoned by someone too weak to stay honest. That distinction matters. If you have ever been left carrying a burden someone else created, you may know how easily their failure becomes your story. You begin to ask what you did wrong. You begin to believe hardship proves something about your worth. It does not. Sometimes hardship only proves that you kept going when someone else did not. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Before I left Sydney the next morning, I placed it in the hotel's shredder bin, page by page. Not because I was trying to erase the past, because I was done giving it a chair at my table. 3 months later, Claire came to Newcastle alone. She arrived at my little terrace house on a Saturday morning carrying a lemon cake from a bakery near the station. Her eyes were tired, but steadier than they had been at the wedding. "Is Daniel all right?" I asked before inviting her in. "He is fine. He is working. I needed to speak to you without him making it easier." That made me smile despite myself. We sat in my kitchen while rain moved down the window panes. She told me Vanessa had not apologized. Instead, she had spent weeks telling relatives that Daniel and Claire had embarrassed her publicly. Graham had moved into the spare room for a while. He still loved his wife, Claire said, but he was finally tired of protecting her from the consequences of her words. "Hello?" I asked. Claire wrapped both hands round her mug. "I started therapy," she said. "Daniel and I are going together sometimes." I did not say I was proud of her. I knew she was not there for praise. "I keep remembering how you stood up at the wedding," she continued. "You did not scream. You did not try to hurt her back. You just stopped agreeing to be treated badly. That took me a long time to learn. I want to learn it faster." I reached across the table and covered her hand. "Then start by believing you do not have to earn basic respect from your own family." Her eyes filled. "I want you in our lives." "Probably." I looked at her for a long moment. "I want that too," I said, "but properly means we do not pretend. It means we tell the truth before resentment turns into distance." She nodded. "Agreed." Daniel came the following weekend. He brought a toolbox and repaired the loose hinge on my garden gate. We worked in the garden afterward, not talking much at first. Then he said, "Mom, I have been thinking about the empty chair." "So have I. I cannot change that day. No, but I can make sure there is never another one." I looked at him, my grown son with dirt on his hands and a worried crease between his eyes. He had not become perfect. Neither had Claire. Neither had I. Families do not heal because someone makes one brave speech. They heal when people keep making different choices after the room has gone quiet. You do not need to promise me a perfect life, I said. Just do not ask me to disappear to make someone else comfortable. I won't, he said. And I believed him not because he said it beautifully, but because he had finally learned that love requires more than feeling bad after the damage is done. There are people who will try to teach you your place by speaking softly, smiling brightly, and making their cruelty sound like etiquette. They may call you sensitive when you resist. They may call you difficult when you stop accepting less. Let them. Your dignity does not become smaller because someone wealthy, polished, or loud refuses to recognize it. It does not need their permission to exist. The day my son married Claire, I arrived afraid of being humiliated. I left with something harder and better than revenge. I left knowing that the place I had spent a lifetime earning was never theirs to give away. And that is the thing I hope you remember when someone tries to move you to the edge of your own story. You do not have to fight for every chair, but you must never agree that you belong on the floor. Have you ever had to set a boundary with family after years of staying quiet? Tell me what finally made you speak.